Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck and, more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I am thrilled to have for round two Tracy Malone. And Tracy's an international divorce coach, narcissist abuse survival coach, author, speaker, educator, victim, and thriver of narcissistic abuse. She's the founder of narcissisticabusesupport.com. She's also the author of Divorcing Your Narcissist. You Can't Make This Shit Up. And Tracy, I am so thrilled to have you. Welcome back to the show.
I'm so excited to be welcomed back to the show. Thank you for having me, Karen.
You're welcome. And you are, first of all, you are only the second person in the history of the show who I've ever had back a second time. And the reason I wanted to do that is to talk about a topic that's a little bit different, but it's a phenomenon that I know you and I have both seen more of lately than there used to be, which has to do with the children of people who are in narcissistic relationships, and specifically children who are now becoming estranged from their parents, the non-narcissistic parent, because they've married a narcissist. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me what you're seeing.
So, when an adult child meets someone, falls in love, most families welcome them in. Oh, we're so happy. They buy them a house, they give them a good wedding, they take care of them. But you don't know that the person your child is marrying is narcissistic because at the beginning, that love bombing extends to the family. That hooks you going, oh, I couldn't have wanted a better person for my child. Oh my God, they're perfect. I'm so happy. And you welcome this person. And then as soon as the ink is dry on the marriage certificate, or even sometimes in the relationship process, they have to eliminate anyone that they perceive as a threat, meaning parents, siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone that would be their support system, even their friends. Imagine if your kid came to you and goes, hey, mom, is it normal that this is happening? And you give them advice and go, I'm not sure, honey, but this, it sounds a little weird, but any kind of thing that you could give them advice on, the narcissist doesn't want you to have any influence. So isolate is going to be the game. And what they do is just so sinister. They demonize the parents, right? Just like we have the smearing and that sort of thing and twisting of stories in any narcissistic relationship, these stories get turned on the parents and they can be accused of and estranged from their adult child because they gave their grandchild a strawberry or they gave their grandchild a cup of water. How dare you do that? How dare you feed my kid, a can of fruit that I was saving for something else out of the cabinet. Like these are the kind of ridiculous false allegations that get blown up and amplified because they're going to tell your child, oh, your parents aren't listening to your boundaries. Oh, they're passive aggressive. And so they start to twist things that happened in the past or are currently happening into this storyline that makes the kids walk away from healthy parents. There's a difference. Remember, there are narcissistic parents that people should get the heck away from. There's no
Mm-hmm.
question of that. But these are the strongest families that this is happening to because that's the bond they have to break.
So it sounds like what we're talking about are adult children who were raised with parents where one of their parents was a narcissist, the other was not. And
Not
so,
necessarily.
no.
No, two pure bred, happy, loving parents and no narcissistic ties. That's what screws up the parents because they've had no exposure to this kind of crazy, right? Of course, there are some when there is a narcissistic, partner, absolutely. But 90% of these estrangements are coming from purebred, do things together, camp together, really, really strong families, both mom and dad. But the narcissist usually targets one. And that
You
is
mean
the
targets mom or dad?
exactly. Sometimes it's both of them and they just like off with your head, never want to talk to either of you. Often as a game, they let, say, I'll just use the example of dad in, but because mom was so close to the child, mom can't be seen, but dad gets to go in. And so what happens is it causes conflict between mom and dad. And mom's like, what
Wow.
did I do? And then the other parent is sometimes going, well, is it better for me to just not see them too? Or should I go and get intel and tell you the grandchildren are okay? And that causes again another rift. They're put in the middle.
Oh my gosh. So what we're talking about here, to be clear, are cases, situations where an adult marries a narcissist, but we're not talking about what's happening in their relationship in terms of, them so much as it's the non-narcissist's parents who are bearing the brunt of this and they are becoming isolated from their adult child and their grandchildren too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Grandchildren become weapons.
So, how long does it take for this to manifest? For example, you just gave the example of, you meet the person and you're like, oh, they're wonderful. They're going to be great for my child. You give them the wedding and then things start to deteriorate, but it takes a little while to cook a grandchild. It's like at least 9 months, right? Unless they were already pregnant when they got married, which also happens. But so how is it when the grandchildren are born that this behavior starts to manifest? Is it before then? Is it after then? What are you seeing?
I even see it in, dating relationships where even though they haven't even put the ring on their finger, they're estranging their parents. So it happens in different situations. It could be, I've had them a week after the wedding and that was it. I've had parents that, a year, 2 years, where it was kind of coasting, but it was always when they came for the holidays, it was a problem. It was like, okay, your mother just looked at me funny. I don't want to go back there anymore. And it starts to escalate. And then everything, it's pick, pick, pick. If you think about the cycle of abuse and narcissistic abuse, idealize, which includes love bombing and winning you over, to the devalue stage, which is where they pick. That's when, and that can take for a long time. It depends on how strong your child is, how soon they acquiesce and stop fighting, going, no, I don't think that's what my mom meant by looking at you that way. I've had parents estranged because at their daughter's, or I'm saying this one was at their son's wedding, and they said that the mother looked at the bride weird. That was it. How do you combat that?
And when you say estranged, what do you mean? What happens?
Basically, they can do it any different combination. Again, some parents are cut off, don't talk to us, don't ever call us. Then sometimes the siblings are also thrown into that bucket. And while other parents have limited contact and they may have access, but it's not their child. Like every single text doesn't even sound like their child. And they're just like, you know, I asked to come and see them for their birthday, but sorry, it's like your cat's in the cradle, no room for your mom. Can't, we're too busy now, right? So it starts to ebb away where we're too busy, can't make it. This year we're going to hit their family's house, and they start to do it that way. But eventually the declaration comes out that, we don't want anything to do with you. And often it comes with a couple threats, like, I want you to get therapy. I've had people have to get therapy and produce receipts to the adult child's partner to show they were getting therapy. And still, even then, they were like, well, that wasn't good enough. I've had the apology tours. This is another factor in this that is heart-wrenching. They accuse you of something and you go, oh my God, that's not what I meant. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And they don't accept the apology, right? They actually use it as a weapon. And I've had people give 2, 3, 400 apologies. And you looked at us wrong. You smiled. You got up from the table too fast. You didn't send me a follow-up email. We're not accepting it. And again, you go back to silent purgatory.
Whoa.
Mhm.
So how does a parent like know if they're before the stage or before the time when they're totally cut out of their child's life?
Mhm.
But things are starting to get a little dicey, right? They're not seeing them as much. The child is making more excuses. Oh, we're too busy. Oh, this or that or the other thing. How do you know when there's a deeper problem or when your kid's just really too busy?
Um, it's usually accompanied with those false allegations, right? It doesn't just go, boom, I know this. It's, mom, you shouldn't have said that. That was passive aggressive. They love to throw that around. They love to throw around that you broken their boundaries despite the fact that they never actually set one, and you're like, okay, well, now I know it is. I won't do that anymore, but it's too late. You've already been cut off. So, these things happen. But I also want you to think about this. It's not just the targeted parents, right? Whether it's both or one, it's also their friends are cut off, their passions are cut off, and everything that they like to do. They like to play guitar, they like to go to the gym, they were on a softball team. Everything gets cut out, which is why the parents are like, my kid was a concert violinist and now they won't pick it up anymore, right? So it's taking away everything. And this happens in every narcissistic marriage. You give yourself to this person and everything about your life becomes gone. And this is what's happening in this younger generation. It's almost to be expected now. In If your child gets one of these narcissists in this age, it is so common. It's just like there's message boards. There's boards out there of how do we estrange and how dare they do this. And all these children are adult children are getting together to talk about this. And I think they're taking the advice that I give to people with narcissistic parents, going, if they're gaslighting you, if they're this, if they're that, this is what you should do. They're taking that, but they're manufacturing the accusation. It's never real. It's always twisted and becomes into something that it never was intended to be.
That's crazy.
I know. If people can see your face as I'm talking, you're like,
I'm just dumbfounded.
yeah.
I mean, because I've had some, like, I've dealt with a lot of parents who, going through a divorce is tough. And it's tough on adult children. A lot of people don't realize the impact that their divorce will have on their adult children, so they don't take it seriously, or they're not sensitive enough, or they do something, or their adult child sides with their spouse in the divorce and says, hey, you did the bad thing, or you blew up the family. This was your decision, therefore I'm mad at you. Okay, that's one situation, and that's a scenario where it often takes a very long time to repair the relationship, but they're not being actively estranged. They're not being isolated. Their child's not being isolated. And it's the child who may not even be in a relationship, but saying, hey, you did this thing. I don't like what you did. I'm mad at you. And then you work through that circumstance, right? But what you're saying is something very, very different, which is that the child is being estranged by their spouse or partner or some other person, and it's not targeted necessarily at the parents, although the parents are suffering because of it, but it's targeted at the child to isolate them as part of the narcissist plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned the divorce factor here. What I've seen, and I actually just made a video, I don't think it's launched yet, but I made a video about when someone was married to a narcissist, right? So they have that, you know, sort of patterns they've seen, the adult child has seen this stuff. And now, like you just said, sometimes they select the narcissist because the narcissist can be all yummy and telling lies about the other one and is showering them with gifts, and they will go towards the narcissistic parent and again go, mom, you did this, I don't like that, whatever you did. But when this happens and you are divorced, that single parent, all they have is their child, right? And so for it now to be ripped away from them, because they are single, it's hard for couples to navigate this together. There is always a disagreement. One parent is going, I don't believe that, we should play this game. We deserve more than this. This isn't okay. I'm not playing the narcissist game. Whereas the other parent is struggling to, kiss the narcissist's butt. And it's the bargaining. I'll do anything. You want me to apologize again? Can I buy you a house? How about I give you this? They will do anything. So that difference in the way the parents handle it is a problem. But think about this. If you're alone and you've got nobody, that is even like the worst thing, because now that they've stripped away the only child or your only family member, right?
Oh my. But let's go back for a minute to the couple, because before we started filming, you and I were talking, and you were talking about the situation where the child or the narcissist targets one of the child's parents. Like this one is the bad one, but the other one is okay. They can come over, but like dad can come over, but mom can't, or vice versa. I can only imagine the conflict that causes between mom and dad, who had a perfectly fine relationship before this, but now one of them can't see their own child. What do parents do in that situation? I mean, because I can see you mentioned it right now, like the one person is saying, I'll do anything, I just want to see my child, I want that relationship. And if they're the person who is still on the good side of the child, like they want to do that, but the other parent is persona non grata and can't even be around the child because they're the target of the narcissist's wrath.
Yeah.
um, what what can a couple who's trying to navigate that situation, what can they do?
They have to learn to work together. Um, Sometimes it is advisable to hold that door open for that one parent to go there. But rules and boundaries, and there's so much shame, especially because the targeted parent in that scenario is the one that raised them, was the Boy Scout leader, was this, did that, all these things, and the other parent was traveling and made the money. But all of a sudden they want the parent that was traveling and made all the money versus the one who, bandaged their boo-boos, right? And so that's the thing, is this narcissistic in-law, daughter or son-in-law, has to take away the stronger relationship bond. That's what it's about. It's not about, oh, let's pick dad and not mom. It's mom is too close. Mom could give them advice. Mom is someone they would depend on. So let's rip that away, right? And so when the couple is facing this together, it has to be that they talk to someone and come up with a plan. Because if you're cool with them going over there while you sit home and cry all day, that's what you'd want to do, because you have a door, you have something, right? They'll take it. But at the other time, it's how do we not become the messenger in between, which kids will
Yep.
disown the father for that in the case we're talking about, right? Um, the emotional toll on everyone is epidemic. I'm talking about guilt, shame, shame. I was a great mother. People go, oh my God, you were such a great mother. What did you do? Because, like, what did you possibly do? Because kids don't leave good parents. I always saw you as a good parent, but what the heck did you do? Right. And that puts so much shame on, especially if the other parent gets to go, right? You're like, if it's both, it's still it sucks either way, but there's a different part. And the grieving cycle, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, all of those things cycle for the whole family. But if you are the targeted parent, you're going to be living in so much shame, so much pain, and it's you just can't even fathom. It's like the death of a child, only they're down the block, right? And
Oh,
I actually had a group recently, and I said, I've never lost a child, but all my parents that I work with say this is like the death of a child. It's disenfranchised grief, because nobody knows what do you mean you're grieving over that? Get over it. It's not recognized as like that they died. I'm not saying they did, but to you, it is the pain and the uncertainty of, is this forever, right? So knowing that this is how they're going to work, you have to get emotional help because you're going to crumble. And if you don't know how to right the ship, what battles to fight, where to stay away, what mistakes not to make, think about it. You make one mistake by sending your grandchildren presents, and I've had a parent get arrested for
What?
just they wouldn't let them see them, so they just mailed presents, and they were arrested.
For what?
I believe it was a restraining order, and they were arrested for on their property and ring camera, and they had been told don't ever come, so there was that, and so they would get arrested. This is not normal warfare. This is relationship warfare, but it's the younger generation. I mean, yes, the older narcissists certainly did it, but not to the parents. Like they isolated what they needed to control, but now it is like, intentional. Go for the jugular, take the most valuable thing, because then they are the person that your child has to turn to. So they've all they've got, right? And it creates a stronger bond for your child and this sicko.
Wow. So, what can parents do? Because it sounds like this can happen to anybody's adult child, right? It's not just in situations where they
Mhm.
grew up in a household where one parent was a narcissist, right? They could have been in a perfectly normal or perfectly healthy family, right?
Absolutely.
So once the parents understand what's going on, what are their options?
Well, it again depends on the situation. Do you have some contact? A lot of parents will get, until it's completely cut off, they'll get this drip where your child is allowed to, well, not that they're allowed, your child will still talk to you when they're in the car without the narcissist. When the narcissist isn't home, they'll actually show you pictures or, get the kids on FaceTime or something. But if the narcissist is home, all that gets cut off. So it can ebb where they start to drip out where they can do it when they're not home, and then that stops, and so it just keeps cycling until everything is cut off.
Okay, so let's say you are a parent and you are in this cycle and you are able to identify what's happening, but you
Mhm.
still have some contact. What can you do? Is there something that you as a parent can do to, like, for example, to snap your kid out of it? For example, let's
Yeah.
say your kid was joined some cult, right? The parents would sometimes hire somebody to go kidnap their kid, get them out of the cult, and deprogram them, right? Is there something like that that applies in this situation? Is that a bad idea? I mean, what are their options when they see the pattern? They see their child becoming more and more estranged. They don't like it. They don't want it. What do they do about it?
Well, our goal is to not make more mistakes because that can extend the sentence, right? Um, the whole cult, get them out and deprogram them, that wouldn't work because they're adults. They would probably have you arrested for violating their rights, right? It's different now than it was in the 60s when we had those cult, let's take them to there. There were camps. They just took them. There were that many, right? It doesn't work that way now. And so what they have to do is learn to communicate with them differently, learn to not make mistakes, learn to emotionally take care of themselves, because when they don't, they make stupid decisions. If they're, not sleeping, not eating, and then they get a text and they respond, and it is the but wrong thing to do, and it causes the silence to get bigger, right? So, learning what to do, how to process this, what's right, what things mean. Why are they doing this, Tracy? Well, they're doing this because it gives you peace to understand the brain workings of a narcissist, the cycle of abuse, if you would. I had the opportunity to witness the whole cycle of abuse in the last week with a client whose narcissistic daughter-in-law was sending them texts. The first one was the hook, the love bombing. Oh, your child is so sad. They were crying. I want you to help, and to kind of suck in the mom. And
Hmm.
then the next time was, you're this, you're evil, until last night at 10:30, I was on the call with her where he's like, don't ever call us. We don't want to talk to you. But it was in a week where he went from this peacekeeper pretending to be, let me fix it. Only I can fix it. You have to deal with me, not her. Right. And then the next step was he started to pick at the mother, and then, boom, it exploded. So it's carefully wording how you send things back to them. How could they interpret this? I just wrote a blog that's going to be a post soon, but are you using guilt language? You automatically go, after all I've done for you, like, don't you know who we are? Like normal responses, right? Those things can extend your sentence. So knowing how to not piss off and poke the bear is going to be your best hope. Knowing how to have opportunities to see the grandchildren, and these are always the grandparents that literally took the kids to school for 5 years, or watch them for the first 3 years of their life so the parents could work, and then without warning, you're off, and they've hired a babysitter, and you are blocked from school to even see them. This is extreme,
Wow.
and they're
So,
not bad parents.
yeah, it sounds like another thing that the parents probably would be wise to do is to get themselves their own therapist,
Hmm.
or support group, or someone like you who can help them, because this has just got to be, I mean, gut wrenching for a parent.
Absolutely. It is just as much as losing someone. In that first group I started to say before, I said I haven't lost a child, and I had a woman who said, I have lost a child, and now I'm estranged from my only other child, and I could handle and cope with the death because it is final and I understand it. I have no understanding of what I did wrong and why I am not allowed to see my grandchildren anymore. And she's like, if I had a choice between the pain, not that you'd want to take the death, but this is that strong and powerful to people.
Well, speaking of death and ends, does this ever end? Is there any hope for a parent that you might someday in the future, your kid will come back around?
Yes, yes. There's all these statistics. Right now, there's about 25% of the United States that's estranged from a child. So that's a weird factoid. But
Wow.
if we are looking for them to come back, behaviors have to change on the parent's part. The narcissist is not going to change.
Right.
So if they, I'll say, suck up to the narcissist. I have had parents who say, I will do anything because my grandchildren are all I care about. And then they embrace the narcissist and be like, you're the best, make me want to barf in my mouth. And they just shower them with the love bombing. They get back in. In my last group, we had 4 of the 8 parents have reconciliations after they learned the skills. And they were like, oh my God, if I had known I just had to do this, I would have done it 2 years ago, right? But because you don't know, you think you're dealing with normal people. So there is a lot of hope in this. And while some can last 10 years or more, and I've had those people in my group as well, um, most of them end after a year or two. And again, a year or two without your kid is heartbreaking, but sometimes they need that space because they have to untangle the lies that the narcissist is feeding them. And they have to come to a place, if they're in counseling, they can come to a place to realize, no, my parents were pretty darn good. I had a good life, and they start to break away the Velcro, right? So there's hope for parents to reconcile with these in some cases. In other cases, they have moved and left the state, changed their phone number, and they will not ever be found. And parents, you know about grandparents' rights. Some parents have fought for grandparents' rights in these situations. That's when they pick up and move out of the state, and no one knows where they went, and they'll never see the grandkids again. So this is a serious situation, but there are situations where they come back, and those are what we pray for. And if they do things differently than what they've been doing, they have some hope.
But what about in like, what if you have some integrity? What if you're the person, I know it's kind of a concept, but you're the person who says, I am not going to play the narcissist game. I am not going to barf in my mouth and say, oh, you're the best thing since sliced bread. I can't do that. It's crazy. it's nonsense. I know it, they know it, and my child needs to know it. So I can't do that. Do those parents have any other options?
No,
Any,
no, no. And again,
boy,
what you just described is the difference that I see in the couple parent, right? Is one is going, I'm not tolerating this stuff. Like, this is lies. This isn't, that's not what happened in our family. And the other one is going, I'll do anything. Let me jump off a bridge for them. I'll do anything. And so that's part of the conflict. But, there are a lot of parents who get to that point that they're just tired of the fight, tired of walking on eggshells. Could you imagine the eggshells that could take two
yes.
hours to write two lines to your child? So you're making sure that you don't say anything wrong. It's just a text. And you have to spend 2 hours because if you say this word, it could be interpreted. If you say that, you bring up a memory, you're going to get in trouble. So everything is so hyper, you know, ramped up with anxiety that parents will go through this for years and then eventually they get to a place where they have to get to that last stage of grief, which is acceptance. Not acceptance that you've lost your child forever, but acceptance that you can't do anything right now, but wait. And that's the hard part. But at the same time, if you get to that place, you start to have friends again. You start to enjoy your life. You actually sleep through the night. You start to have meals again 3 times a day, right? That's what the parents need to do to get themselves taken care of. And then, like you said, get into therapy to understand this because that shame, that guilt that you're holding and they're feeding it to you is going to make you miserable and you will get sick. And and that's one of the biggest concerns parents have is would they come back if I had cancer? I've also had parents that have had cancer and they didn't come back. I've had grandparents die and the child doesn't come back. I've had siblings die and the child doesn't come back. And they had no problem with the sibling, right? So that's how strong these divides can be because the narcissist has poisoned your child's mind against the entire family. Everything has been rewritten. Every memory, every thought is, well, that wasn't them listening to your boundaries or, you know, just any stupid excuse. They will twist it and manipulate it and then plant these seeds in your head and your kid will probably resist it. No, that's not what I meant. They try to fight back for a while until they just go, okay, I'm tired of listening, whatever. And they listen and then they go along with it. Um, so it's complicated.
Wow. Is there any way a parent can see this coming and get their child out of the situation before they're in too deeply?
Depends on the child. It depends on how much they've eaten the bad apple, how much they have, drunk the Kool-Aid, if you would, right? Some of them are movable before it happens and gets worse. Others are, you're trying to control me and that pushes them away. So, getting to them, you're not going to go, I believe that person's a narcissist. You better be careful. That would push them away from second one. That's don't call them a narcissist rule number one. But you know, I've had parents that are trying to guide them, educate them, spending, especially the ones that are 20, maybe still living in their homes that are now dating someone. I just got an email this morning going, oh my God, what do I do? And, that's where you have a little more control where they're in your house and they're 20 and they're dating someone. Instead of going, they're a narcissist, you're tapping into their behaviors. Gosh, that sounds confusing. How did you handle that? Isn't that something called gaslighting? I don't know, so you're not going, that's gaslighting. You're starting to let them
Right,
discover it on their own and then question things a little bit more because you're being gentle instead of, that's not right. That's not, all those normal reactions
right.
push them further. So, yeah, does that answer that?
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing to me that this can happen even while your child is living with you.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Again, they live with them until they're fully estranged and then they're out.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
that.
that makes sense. But tell me again, like, so I know this is an area where you've started working. Can you tell our listeners about the work that you do? So if somebody's listening and they think, That's me. Oh, I need help. I need something. What's out there for them? What do you do?
Well, I coach parents, one-on-one or two on me, one. And a lot of times it is the couple that are struggling and they might be struggling with those differences of how to handle it or united in some situations. What do we do? Um, I have groups that I do, and I recently did something last month that was just a one night, 2 hour, and the parents that came found out, oh my God, we're not alone. This is exactly what our kid did. They only called in the car. Oh my God. And that I'm not alone. And because all your friends are not in this bucket. And even therapists will not know how to address the estrangement. They'll address your fear, your anger, your sadness, but they're not going to go, don't do this. This could hurt you. That's important. And so because of my experience in narcissistic abuse, from divorcing to marrying to co-parenting, all the way along the thing, and narcissistic parents, I have helped people through this for years. And so it's the same methodology to apply of changing your patterns, letting go of guilt and shame, trying to understand, trying to format your letters better so that you are not poking the bear. That's like the biggest hint that people can do is watch how you're writing them and communicating. Will anything be perceived as you're guilting them? Are you trying to control them? It's stupid, but that's what I do. I help people write letters to their children. Whatever it is, we are building these kind of um, support systems for parents. And if you don't have support, get some. It's different. And again, you don't have to be like, Tracy's $10,000, coaching package. It's 1 hour at a time as you need it to get the answers that you're struggling with and get your ship righted again. It doesn't mean your kids are going to come running back. It means we're going to avoid making more mistakes that push them further away.
That makes so much sense. And I can say you and I have known each other for a very long time. And I can't think of anyone who is better qualified to help parents in this situation. You have been in this space, knocking your socks off for years and years and years. And you have probably, I'll go out on a limb here and say what you won't say about yourself, which is you've probably helped more people deal with narcissists than any other human being I know. I mean, period, full stop. And so if somebody is out there and they're concerned that they're in this situation, I can't I can't say enough about reaching out to Tracy, or someone like her. I don't know anyone else who's doing this, but to you or someone like you to get help, to get support, because I would think that that's part of the guilt and the shame that you're feeling is that you think you're the only one. You feel isolated. You feel terrible, and there are ways to lighten the load for you. You may not change the situation with your child, or you may not change it right away, but if you can make yourself feel better, that's going to be a great start. That's what I would think.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very sweet.
Well, you're welcome, and I mean what I say. So if people do want to find you, where's the best place they can do that?
They go to my website, narcissistabusesupport.com. Um, we have a whole page on narcissistic daughter and son-in-laws. You will find plethoras of blogs and what do you do with here? And I just wrote one yesterday, that's not going to come out for a little while, but it's what do you do when they say they'll go to therapy with you? Because parents will be like, oh, they said we can go to therapy with them. And then they go to therapy and it doesn't work out well. And so there's a methodology to that. There's a way to handle it. There's a way to navigate the conversation, not take things personally. You have to prepare yourself for the false allegations and how are you going to respond to them? And what if the therapist starts to blame you or they're not listening to your side? I mean, there's so much in there, but that's
Wow.
all on my website. So I just keep putting out the data. And if you get on my mailing list, I update all the parents with all the different options and all the new blogs that go out.
Oh, wow. Tracy, thank you so much. Thank you for coming and having this conversation. It has been such an important one to have, especially for parents who are feeling the pain of an estranged child.
Mhm.
So thank you, thank you, thank you for anyone watching or listening. Go to Tracy's website, find all of her materials. I know you probably have more free stuff than anybody I know, and the paid stuff, because getting the one-on-one personal attention to their specific situation can be life-changing. So I encourage you to do all that. Tracy, thank you again so very much for being here. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are watching and for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed today's conversation, if you want more conversations like this, please do me a big favor. Give this episode a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe everywhere you can subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.